It's Rog. It's Tuesday night. What have we just witnessed? We are doing it live after the United States roared back from the insipid surrender against Germany on Saturday. Tonight, we faced old foe Ghana, who were Ghana in name, but not in memory of traumas past, and we absolutely smashed them in the most feel-good friendly of all time. And boy, how we needed this. Yes, I know the first rule of friendlies is we don't read too much into friendlies, but 4-0, clean sheet, big goals, big players, some response. It's all a bit like watching Everton smash Bournemouth, and we will break it all down in the company of someone who's played for the United States against Ghana in the World Cup, my friend. I'll introduce him in one quick second. But let me remind you how this works as we relive the entire game, then take your questions live. Also, via Twitter, Insta, email, and YouTube live. Shout out to everyone watching this on YouTube right now. And if you're with us on AMP, request to call in. We'll move you up onto the stage. You know how to do this. Let's dive into it with a great friend of mine, a gent who's both the host of the Vamos podcast on the Men in Blazers Media Network. He's got a black belt in CONCACAF. He's also the co-host of Football Americas on ESPN Plus. It is a joy to welcome on this night, goal frenzy, Mr. Herc Gomez.
Raj, my man, how are you doing? These are the nights that make me miss playing. I don't really ever miss playing, but when you see like things like this, you're like, I miss those nights.
God, my first question for you. Well, you are a gent who knows Ghana well. You're on the field against them in that traumatic 2010 World Cup tie, which we won't talk about because it was 1-1 when you came on. But we won't talk about that, about how we ultimately lost 2-1 in extra time. But Herc, my question was, if you had your cleats, I mean, USA were phenomenal, as we will discuss. Ghana, as we'll also discuss, very, very bad. We'll talk about those. But if you had your cleats, how many goals do you think you would have bagged tonight?
uh, it's funny because we're gonna talk about this, Raj. But I was thinking about this, like when you're in that moment, like as Fowler and Balogun is in, right, in the first half and things are going so well for you, you'd rather be in that first half because it's so easy thinking you just scored 4. Well, the game's going to be so open for the second half. But we saw in that second half, and I was feeling for Ricardo Pepi because it just wasn't there. The spaces weren't there, just as they were in the first half. So it all depends. Am I coming on? Am I coming off the bench here, or did I already start? Because that would depend on the amount of goals I would get. But in all honesty, it's these games where you're going to get some looks. That I guess it's circumstantial. I shouldn't say it's circumstantial.
Is this your humble brag way of saying you think you would have scored 4, Herc?
Not 4, maybe 3. Hat trick, a hattie, maybe.
Yeah, I had myself down as 2. 1.8 to 2 was I would have probably finished one at least with my head. Got myself on the end of a desk cross or two. And probably gone for a little pile driver. They were dodgy. We were magnificent. But first of all, let us open with a toast. Raising my first Bud Light of the day to Michael Bradley, who announced today he will retire at the end of the MLS season. His 10th already with Toronto FC. 36-year-old won 151 US men's national team caps. That's third most all time. I think that's behind me and Herc. He went to 2 World Cups. He'd accomplished European career with Gladbach, Chievo and Roma, who's magnificent. A little bit of Aston Villa in there too. But his legacy, it's got to be said, forever intertwined with the darkness of the 2018 cycle. But honestly, it should not be. Michael Bradley was a remarkable human being at his peak to witness on a football field. Before he returned to MLS, he played with the simmering intensity of Jean-Luc Picard, Yul Brynner, and Jason Staven compressed into a single beautiful, bald human being, a ferocious player. To be honest, a very guarded interview, but a ferocious interview. In that 2014 cycle, honestly, it felt like the whole American game depended on Klinsmann getting the balance between how far he was prepared to push Michael Bradley forward and how much he'd keep Michael Bradley back. He was that dominant on both sides of the ball. And I interviewed him the night before the Snowmageddon game in Colorado. He was so focused. It was a must win. He was so obsessed. He kept, as he spoke, I'll never forget this. He kept swiping the air with his hotel key in between the two of us. And genuinely, I didn't flinch, but I did believe he was going to slice my nose open as he was reinforcing his words with just every single swipe. That is him. His methodologically selected words emerged with a fierceness, a fire that suggested each had been forged in an incandescent foundry that was burning somewhere deep inside him. God love him. We talked for a long time. He always reminded me of the quote after that 2009 Confederations Cup when we shocked Spain. His famous quote, and it is famous. It's a great quote for tonight. All the expletive experts in America, everybody who thinks they know everything about soccer, they can all look at the score tonight and let's see what they have to say now. He could have been talking about tonight, really, Herc. I mean, that's how he should be remembered. Really a player constantly written off. He always loved his chances to win because of, not despite of, being written off, and he most often did. Herc, before we get into the game, just a quick dominant memory of that singular man from you who played with him, shared a locker room with him. I mean, we will rarely see his like again.
Yeah, I think you said it best, how fierce he was. He is a fierce competitor, as fierce as they come. The man is also loyal to a T. Like, if you buy in and he is bought in with you, there's no turning back. That man will protect you with everything in his being. That's just the type of a person he is. And if you've ever met his father, you'll understand why. Michael Bradley, without a doubt, is one of the best U.S. men's national team players that's ever worn a jersey. And I hope people remember him for what he was. I hope people remember the type of player he was in his prime. I hope people remember how difficult it was back then to go abroad, to test yourself.
God.
When you think about players leaving, now the Ricardo Pepis, when you think about the Gianluca Buzios, when you think about those young players leaving, Michael left. And he left to the Netherlands.
Herenveen.
I think Herenveen. And Michael had a string of like 7-8 goals or games where he just kept scoring goals as a central midfielder, defensive midfielder.
He was so lonely there too, Herc. I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere. He was just so young,
but
so raw.
But that is Michael. That is Michael. He wanted his football. And with that came a loan move to, I believe, the Premier League, where it didn't go his way. And he kept trying to do what he needed to do to better himself. And at his peak, I firmly believe he steps into any generation's midfield for the U.S. men's national team and is the man. Is the man. He is him and will still dominate. At his peak, he's one of the most dominant figures I've seen in a U.S. jersey. And I hope he's remembered as such, because you spoke about 2018. I still think a lot of people use him and Josie Altidore, as scapegoats for that failed World Cup bid.
Remember him for the great times, and there were so bloody many. God, I would have loved to have seen him tonight, Herc, to be candid. You, me, him playing in a front three would have been utterly magnificent. I honestly think the scoreline might have been the same, but to this game in Nashville against the 60th in the World Ghanaian team, preparing for the World Cup qualifiers that is to come. And yes, Ghana used to beat us 2-1 all the time until they didn't. Thank you, John Brooks. But we entered this window with a sense of excitement. Germany, Ghana, real testing marks for us, and a belief, we had that before Saturday, that these games would be true markers of progress for this United States team, who are going to have to feed off friendly scraps, friendly indicators for much of this cycle all the way up to World Cup 2026. Instead, suddenly, we staggered into this game after that Germany beatdown. We're a bit in the Natalie Imbruglia position. We were cold, we were shamed, we were lying naked on the floor. Saturday's game. Huge credit to Matt Turner after the game. Final whistle. He talked about how frustrating it was. The little moments made a big difference at the World Cup. And it's kind of the same story here tonight. And I heard that and I was like, almost like he was saying, we're not learning. We need to learn. The changes need to occur. This learning curve. Where is it? That flat Germany performance refracted in the fact that this was a different lineup, an almost experimental lineup. Gio starting again. Let the healing continue. But fascinatingly, I love this. 9 out of 11 starters tonight were dual nationals. Godspeed, the strength of America, its wonder, its diversity, its strength, its all embracing magic. 3 changes from the Germany game. In came Danish American Christoph Lunt of Palermo, Johnny Cardozo, the Brazilian American Johnny, and Atlanta United's Miles Robinson out, my mate Tim Ream. The glue guy, Joe Scally, Weston McKinney. What did you see? Transport us back before kickoff, Herc. What did you see in these lineup tweets?
Necessary change. If you look at the first game versus Germany, there were a few performances, and we can sit here and talk tactics all we would like, and we could try to place the blame on Greg Berhalter, and he may have some of the blame versus Germany, a lot of the blame, but it wasn't Greg Berhalter who was on the field making juvenile mistakes, betraying his defensive principles, values, committing just schoolboy errors, individual errors that really did the U.S. men's national team in. Maybe it was Greg Berhalter in the way he was directing the team and the tactics of when to press and how to try to play about a team like Germany, who is so just talented on their day, can really make you pay, which they did. But I saw change. He changed a few guys who maybe didn't have their best game, gave opportunity to a few others who maybe we all wanted to see, and he did what he told us he was going to do. He told us he was looking to get Giovanni Reyna minutes in the vein of Fowler and Balogun, like he did last winter with Fowler, where Fowler started both games, and he did. I mean, we're going to get into Gio Reyna, but there's a plan to this. I like that there's a plan and an execution, and then I enjoyed the rebound game from the boys, because I think it's always important, if you have a poor showing, to show that it's behind you and to show that you want to be better.
We didn't know this at kickoff. Lively opening, Balogun spinning chance, I think within the first 90 seconds, a warning shot of all that was to come. But that first 5 minutes, 2 teams, you could see kind of fragile confidence all over the field, searching for interplay and chemistry. The United States started to find that rhythm. Tim Weah surging. Serginho Dest looking to break seams like a Dutch-American Devin Hester. Serginho's such a fascinating player. It's crazy, sometimes maddening. Sometimes he completely disappears. And sometimes he looks like he's playing twice the speed of everybody else on the field. And it all came together early and often. 10 minutes, a goal, really carved out of Greg Berhalter's dreams personnel-wise. Serginho Dest, who looked so vulnerable against Germany, feeling confident with a trademark catch me if you can run, slipped in Ballo out in the wide channel. Ballo, once he gets within the vicinity of goal, he's a shooter's shoot guy. And he took his. The defence buckled while attempting to parry. Some incredible breakdancing moves on the defensive side. And the ball just ricocheted out to whom? Of course, it had to be Gio bloody Reyna. And Gent, all I'm going to say is, hit the ball as hard as it was if it was the head of his enemy. I mean, if ever Greg needed a goal, he really did. He was kind of in Pepe, please score me a goal territory. Pepe wasn't on the field. Gio was. Of course, it had to be him who struck first, right, Herc?
And it was Gio who was striking first against Germany. If you think about the immediate danger for the U.S. men's national team versus Germany, it came at the foot of Giovanni Reyna, slipping through defenders in between tight lines, finding Fowler and Balogun in open space. Fowler and Balogun in the second half versus Germany kind of faded away. Why? Because his quarterback, his supplier, his best friend on the soccer field wasn't there anymore. It's Gio Reyna. Gio has a way of unlocking defenses with his eyes. He gets the ball and he sees an opening and he slips it. And Fowler and Balogun, if there's anything he does so well, it's his movement. He is fluid. He is crisp. He is sharp. And I like what you said there. He shot. as a forward, you understand that he's not necessarily looking to cross it, but he's looking for that to be a dangerous ball across the face of goal. He's shooting back door. He's trying to get something going. The ball ends up falling to Gio Reyna. I thought it was a very sharp angle to have a shot, but he whipped it in with a ton of pace, put the defender in a compromising position facing his own goal. Ball pops to who? Gio Reyna. You create your own luck. Those are circumstances of a play that Gio Reyna sniffed out. And listen, Serginho Dest was a menace. And that first play, you said it was Greg Berhalter's dream. I think that's any U.S. men's national fan's dream. Having players like Gio Reyna, Dest, and Florian Balogun that are so good in open space link up. The only player missing right there, or two players missing maybe, were Weah and Pulisic for it to really be capped off. But as good of a play as you're going to get to force the opposition to make a mistake, and then you take advantage of it.
God, the only goal that could be more ripped from US fans' dreams, as you indicate, Herc, would possibly be probably Chris Richards smashing the ball in off José Zardes' face. That is probably the only goal that could have come close to that. But that was the fifth goal for Gio. His first for the United States since June 9th, 2021 against Costa Rica. GFOP at Clausewitz. Bang on this, by the way. The TV match directors did this all game. Can't believe the TV producers didn't cut away to the Triple G once during Gio's celebration. How are we supposed to read too much into his reaction when they produce television like this? I mean, that is the truth. We did not see enough GG. They've clearly decided to write him out of the story a little bit. You know, over the summer, United were here, and Eric Ten Hag didn't do any interviews at all pre-season. He didn't want to be part of the story. It's almost as if they're like, you know what? Let's keep Greg out of this for this 90 minutes. We didn't get a single bloody memeable moment. James Boris on YouTube says, Gio slaking at the Courier smiting of the ball. Yes, James, the YouTube chat is absolutely humming right now. Drop your comments in. Come and be with us. It would get worse for Ghana. Within 8 minutes, Balo brought down by League 2's Gideon Mensah. God bless. By the way, can we talk about Balo for a second? His link-up play, so hungry tonight. I was like, let Balo take the penalty. Then I remembered Balo has just missed twice in one game from the penalty spot. So I was actually relieved to see Pulisic step up, went straight down the middle. I think it's his 87th goal in his last 5 games, or it just feels like it for Christian. It's actually his 6th goal in his last 8 games. Magnificent numbers, magnificent form, magnificent joy. A gent being the consistent him that he's always believed lies in there. And then within 3 minutes, Balo wouldn't be denied, span his defender like Hakeem the Dream, and just arrowed the ball home with precision. Oh, that was a Herc Gomez goal. See what happens when you feed this man. But the celebration, the relief, the joy, not just from Balo, but you could see in the faces of the teammates who surrounded him immediately. You could just sense the frustration rolling off and how much he wanted this, Herc.
It's important for a goal scorer to score goals, especially a goal scorer like Fuller. I'm a firm believer that nines need to score goals. He's very purposeful with his movement. It's for him to be dangerous. So it's good to see him get on the end of that. And listen, that was a beautiful turn. And he smashed it with a decisiveness to his strike. Lifted it, it roofs it. It's got some pace on it. It spins the defender. I thought it was beautiful, but it went in. And that's the most important thing. I've learned a lot about Florian Balogun.
Yeah, please talk about this.
You mentioned the 2 penalty kicks missed. Monaco, his first start, Ben Yedder, the team captain, the center forward, isn't there. He starts in front of him, takes the first penalty kick, misses. They get a second penalty kick. He says, I want to take this, misses again. So many other forwards at 22 years of age would have crumbled the next game.
By the way, that's a Pepe Augsburg trajectory you're on in that moment.
Yeah, and it can make for being in a very dark place. I mean, how easy of an arc, of a story arc, would it have been? That's Balo's season, and it's downhill from there. But what we saw was him come back into the starting lineup, prove to the coach that he wanted a second opportunity and score, and then score again. It's with the U.S. men's national team. And I firmly believe Ricardo Pepi is going to make Fowler and Balogun better. When you have somebody nipping at your heels, when you have somebody breathing down your neck, it's make or break. And Ballo right now is showing us who he is. So you mentioned the goal that he scored, um, the ball that he put in for Gio, count playing supplier, showing us different facets of his game. There was a ball that he slid in, a square ball to Christian Pulisic, point blank, that Pulisic missed in front of the goal. I think Fowler and Balogun slowly peeling away at who he is, and we're starting to see how dangerous of a player he can be.
Let me ask you about this because, you know, over the two games, barely touched the ball against Germany. Much more effective tonight against suboptimal opponents. But, you know, Greg's first cycle was built on this kind of naive idea, this old school idea, old school, you know, US men's national team circa the late 90s era that speed kills, you know, verticality, run fast, which honestly the same kind of tactics that doomed our women at the World Cup this cycle. When you speak to the players, the women's team post World Cup, they're still, you know, frustrated that the main Vlatko idea was go fast, get the ball to Sophia Smith, go, go, go.
Right.
You know, and the real teams were able to pick apart their opponents' vulnerabilities, go for them, manipulate the back line, buckle the midfield out of position, manufacture goals. Ballo wants service. I mean, that's how he's thriving at Monaco. Work the ball to him. Don't charge forward at 99 miles an hour and see what happens frantically. Over the course of these two games, how do you understand what kind of play Ballo needs to thrive and how can we, you know, serve that?
Yeah, he needs vision. There are players on the U.S. men's national team that have that vision to play supplier, um, and facilitator. Giovanni Reina, absolutely, and I think he's been his favorite partner since the final versus Canada in the Nations League, the CONCACAF Nations League in Las Vegas, where he slips the ball right into him. He actually played the same ball against Germany, where it was a little too wide for Ballo, and he tries cutting it across. He needs players like Christian Pulisic, Luca De La Torre, who's a facilitator for more of a deep line position, but players who can see the field, who have the vision to open up lanes and see the run. When you're a player that's dependent on movement, and I was this type of player throughout my career, I was dependent on movement in and around the box. You want to create space and then occupy new space in direction of goal. Balogun is the same way. His runs are with the purpose. I believe on the play that he pulls it back to Christian Pulisic, you can see him lay the ball off and spin his defender and turn an open space. It's always decisive and with a purpose. So you have to understand this. And the only way to understand this is with timing, is with reps. And he's so new to the program. He's so new to a lot of these players. Giovanni Reina is coming back from injury. He's played 26 minutes with his club. This last time we saw him before this window was the CONCACAF Nations League semi and final, excuse me, in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's going to take time to get on the same wavelength with Fowler and Balogun. But it'll get there. And once it gets there, this is where Greg Berhalter comes into play. It's not every team will facilitate or afford you the same spaces as a Ghana. And a lot of it was very good U.S. men's national team, but also very bad Ghana. And they were bad against Mexico, and they proved to be bad against the U.S. men's national team. So when you have a team like Germany who at times won't facilitate that or put you under pressure in the midfield so the players won't have that vision, how can you still utilize a weapon like Fowler and Balogun? That's going to be a challenge for Greg Berhalter.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Ghana because incredible stat from Opta that the United States had scored 3 goals after 22 minutes, the fastest they've scored 3 goals against a non-CONCACAF opponent since at least 1931. I love that stat, at least 1931. I mean, this was narrative, as I've said, ripped from Greg Streams, Gio, Pulisic, Ballo, all scoring, really the American Holy Trinity. This was more than goals. This was healing Herc. You know, Berhalter unleashing a performance worthy of the BJ Callahan days of kind of free-flowing Geo ball. And it's got to be said, as you just have, Ghana, they were bad. They were very, very bad. I think they were two blatant, frustrated, shameless hacks away from gaining automatic qualification into CONCACAF. First, how much of this was that Ghana were just bloody awful? I started to think James Garner, Everton's James Garner, on his own would be better than this Garner. How much was it that they were bad and God bless, we enjoyed ourselves, but this was more about them than us?
Let's give credit to the U.S. men's national team, right? Because after a poor performance, the worst performance that I've seen in Greg Berhalter's era from his U.S. men's national team against Germany, and those are the numbers as well. Like the expected goals for Germany were the highest of any opponent that Greg Berhalter's ever faced. The reaction, this reaction was a very positive reaction. So let's not take that away from them. But Ghana was poor. How much of that was the U.S. men's national team making Ghana be poor? I thought Yunus Musa and Johnny Cardoso were very good controlling the midfield, but they also didn't have a whole lot of trouble. Johnny Cardoso, for getting one of the first actual starts, the Brazilian American was very good. Yunus Musa was good. London on the left-hand side was good. But they also didn't have a lot to do. This was a one-way show, and it was going forward. So we don't have to worry about that. Serginho Dest is going to shine a lot more. Ghana has some players. Iñaki Williams, Kudos, who plays for West Ham. He was at Ajax. Thomas Partey. Like, they've got some players on their team.
They didn't exactly seem that arsed, did they? I mean, I don't think we want to have this convo. I don't think this Rog wants to come out. They didn't see that was not a Mikel Arteta coach Thomas Partey performance.
But that's what I wanted to say. Those players, those top players, Raj, how frustrated did they look? I mean, look at the frustration on their faces. It almost looked like Ghana gave up. And maybe it's an accumulation of the Mexico game that they played where they were very poor, and this game, another 90 minutes where they were very poor. And it could be a combination of the two. I'd like to think the U.S. men's national team showed a lot of resolve and a lot of heart in the way they changed their story after the Germany game. But this Ghana team was bad.
It is a story change, and I do want to get to that. By the way, Johnny Cardoso, who you mentioned, that moustache is up there. I mean, I wouldn't put it in Sasha Kleshtan kind of ether. I think it's definitely up there with yours on its day. I'm not sure it's quite there with Chris Richards, which is just so nonchalant.
Tom Bogart.
Yeah, Bogues. Yeah, it's definitely better. Johnny Cardoso's. I mean, Johnny Cardoso's is definitely crushing Bogues. I mean, God bless. Tommy Scoop stash is just its own wonderful category of joy-filled nose hair. But God, it's good to see. It's good to see a verdant American stash winning November while it's still October. Another comment from YouTube. William Roberts. Was it bad Ghana or a good US men's national team formation? Ghana looked decent second half when we switched to 4-3-3. I mean, the second half, it really was epic. Do not read too much into friendly. I think I'm not watching Berhalter's press conference, but I'm pretty sure he'll say that he told his team not to try and score like the under sixes. Just pass the ball around, but don't humiliate the opponent. Gio added a fourth. First ever brace for him for the United States. Magnificent, man. I mean, genuinely joyful. This kid who's suffered with injury at Dortmund, had the great Nations League summer under BJ Callahan, just proving himself again. I mean, you felt like he was slaying just any kind of fraying narrative tonight, building a formative platform for him to just reinsert himself, obviously, clearly, as one of the first names on the team sheet going forward. That is a massive win from this window for everyone that cares about the United States, bashing home from one of those insane indirect inside the box free kicks that are kind of like NFL safeties. We had the clean sheet still. Not that Matt Turner had to do nothing. He had one magnificent flying save to show the world that he's not just in the lineup for the national anthem singing. So, I mean, Ghana terrible. Unmotivated, unbothered. DeMarcus Beasley said at halftime they looked like they were already emotionally wanting to be back with their club teams. GFOP at Tom Harlan tweeted, "Death." This one was harsh, and I'd love you to weigh in on this, Herc, definitively. Death, taxes, and Greg only beating small teams. How do you understand this?
Mm.
Was there something different that you saw in the idea of football that was played tonight to the Germany game?
Yeah, I think that's unfair to Ghana. Ghana could have had a bad run of 2 games. I mean, under head coach Chris Sutton, I think this is
Putin.
his first 2 losses. You know, this national team or this nation has been to the last 4 World Cups. Uh, it's gonna sting. It's gonna hurt. But I don't think by any means they're a small nation. I get the sentiment. If you look at Greg Berhalter's record, it's obviously better against Central American teams, Caribbean nations, Mexico, and I will add the worst generation of Mexico players that I've ever seen in my lifetime. I think Jimmy Lozano today is trying to right that ship, and they look a lot
I
better.
think you're
But
legally
certainly,
obliged to repeat that every time you mention us beating Mexico, Herc.
I think the statistic is under Greg Berhalter, he has 4 wins over top 20 FIFA ranked teams, and 3 of those 4 are against Mexico. So, I believe the fourth is Morocco,
Yep.
if I'm
It was
not
a Morocco,
mistaken.
it
The
was a Morocco
Cincinnati.
B team ahead of the World Cup. It's a Morocco team that just thrilled us in
Yes,
the World Cup. They sent over some duffers as some misdirection to kind of rope a dope the world.
they did a great job because nobody saw that coming. I don't think I've seen a more difficult road to a semifinal than Morocco's road, and that should be the blueprint for the U.S. men's
Thank
national
you.
team. And you look at what Germany did. I mean, you play. I don't care what Germany was doing before that. They made a switch. Julian Nagelsmann is a very good coach. That is a very deep pool. Excuse me. You cannot be so naive to think you can dictate play against a Germany at any point in time. So pick your moments. Be smart. Morocco literally defended, clawed, fought, hung over a crossbar for 90 minutes, and then went in transition and depended on set pieces. And look what they did. They knocked out the likes of Spain, of Portugal. They almost did it to
Yeah,
France.
they did it.
You
They did
know,
it with robust football. They did it with
of
lockdown
course.
football first. They did it with picking moments. They're not trying to play proactive football where we attack with 10 and defend with 10. They're not trying to
Or
prove.
you press them in a very high
They're
manner
not trying to
and
prove
open
themselves
yourself
to
up.
anyone. Don't get me started on this. There is something about our own inferiority complex where we feel we don't just have to play opponents, but we have to impress them. Like, no one cares about the impressing part. It really pisses me off, to be candid. Charlie FO says, can't play Mexico all the time, which is incredibly sad. But ultimately, in this game, it leads so comprehensive. We didn't even have to worry about being out tacticked in the second half. Greg threw on Western and the beautiful
Yeah.
Pepe and Brendan Aronson, hungry for goals. We had Lenny Maloney, playoff Lenny, got his debut, a lovely moment. I do believe, I have to look at the FIFA rules, but I think this is how it works. If the US had scored one more goal, we legally got to keep all of the IU brothers. Those are the rules, but we didn't. That clean sheet held up, though. Really a night of ruthless moments. I hope that's how we remember it for the United States. Real respite for Greg Berhalter. God bless. Few teams go from flat performance to believing again from a fan base perspective, Herc. We do. We have a beautiful ability to hype ourselves up. We US fans, Herc.
It's one of the most beautiful things, and I won't just limit it
It's
to the
amazing.
U.S. fan. I think the CONCACAF fan in general, from Mexico to Canada to the U.S., anybody that shows us a glimpse of promise, next big thing, and we can go back to the Freddie Adu days. We can go back to whoever you want to put in that category. It's happened, and we're victims of that.
We are. We don't just hype ourselves up, but we erase any evidence to the contrary so quickly. We just screw it into a little paper ball and discard it. We believe again. So I need to ask you, what do we make of this, Herc? I watched the movie. I was in Europe yesterday, and I watched the movie on the flight back, The Prestige, the Christopher Nolan movie. And I, I've not watched it in a while. I don't know if you all remember. It's a Christopher Nolan movie about magic with a great Michael Caine narrating how a magic trick works. Because I do think about how we go from we're terrible to, oh my God, we're going to win the World Cup. That just like our ability to hype ourselves up. And Michael Caine explains how tricks work, and he talks about the 3 stages of the trick. He says, first of all, there's the pledge. Then there's the turn, And then there's the climax, which is called the prestige of any trick. And the first act of the trick, the pledge, it shows you something which professes to be ordinary, which is really Greg's first cycle to me. The second act, and by the way, this is quite sick that I'm even watching movies on the planes and thinking about the United States of America. But the second
It
act,
kind of is.
the second act, it's amazing. It's all a parallel. It's all just like a metaphor. The second act, the turn, makes it do something extraordinary, such as disappearing, which was Renegade for me. That crazy moment. And then the third act is called the prestige. It brings back the original object, or in this case, the person that has disappeared, which is Greg 2. Clearly the Greg 2 cycle, Geo 2 too. And I feel this window, we're watching the most confusing prestige of all time. If you're still with me, I don't know if you are, which is the United States men's team. You know, the team who wilted, overmatched against Germany, quality gap, out tacticked in the second half, 3-1, which flattered the United States. You know, if Fulkrug finished, he could have had a hat trick. It could have been a beat down.
Easily.
You know, this was a Germany, as you say, the barely held off Mexico in the final minutes in a 2-2 draw tonight. Or are we, Herc? God, this is a long-winded piece of utter bullcrap I've manufactured. I do apologise to Christopher Nolan because I thought the movie was amazing. Are we the team that absolutely made mincemeat of a very unmotivated Ghana, but just joyously, ruthlessly, wondrously converted chances so joyously tonight? How do you understand it?
Yeah, I think it's somewhere in between. I think there is the I want to say coach Greg Berhalter and player being naive enough, and this isn't the messaging that Greg Berhalter has given, his players. Before it was we want to change the way the world views American soccer, and now it's we want to change American soccer forever. There's something to that when you believe it so
Third
much.
cycle. We want to change American soccer on Mars.
Yeah, but listen, I had Walker Zimmerman on Vamos, right? And I asked him, what the bar was for the World Cup in 2026, and he said it's to win it. Like, we believe we can win it. He says, I know that sounds crazy, and I'm not saying we're going to be the favorites. I'm not saying, it's going to happen. We believe we can win it. There is something admirable about having that blind faith. But you need to earn the moments where you, as Weston McKennie before the game against Germany said, we not only expect to compete with teams like Germany, we expect to beat them. It sounds like last World Cup qualifying when you had a 3-game window and we're talking about 9 points, and it was Ricardo Pepi, saving Greg Berhalter's job in Honduras. So it's somewhere in between. You have to realize that you have the potential and that you have the ability and that you have the confidence to try things, right? The valor. But you can't be naive in how you go about it, so a team like Germany skins you at home. At home, by the way. So it's somewhere in between, Raj.
I do. I think this is the key. It's how I think about it. The Ghana win was lovely. It was emphatic. It was wondrous tonight, and I know those gents will love it. I think probably even as we are on YouTube tonight, someone will be sending Christian Pulisic down a Bud Light filled beer slide in the locker room, and they'll be all the better for it. But the sting of this window for me, Herc, the missed opportunity. It's something you tweeted. You kind of mentioned it after the final whistle against Germany. You tweeted, the US men are now 4-4-6 against teams ranked in the top 20 of the FIFA World Cup rankings under Greg Berhalter. 3 of those 4 wins have come against Mexico. I'm legally obliged to copy you and say the worst Mexico team of a generation. They've won just 1 match out of 11 against top 20 teams that aren't Mexico. It was the Morocco game. And that's beyond frustrating. It really is. The US has only won 2 matches out of 8 against European sides under Greg. The 2 wins came against Northern Ireland, and Bosnia and Herzegovina in friendlies. We wanted to be kings of CONCACAF. We are, but CONCACAF cannot be our everything. That is just such a dangerous game, Herc.
It is, but And I'm so torn on this one, Raj, because I agree 100% with what you're saying. But what's the alternative? I mean, with the amount of games in the FIFA calendar, who are you going to play? You have World Cup qualifiers, you have Nations League in Europe, you've got whatever else they want to put into the CONCACAF calendar. It's just like that's who you have.
But that's
You
why
know,
that's
like
why
right
this
now.
pissed me off this window because I did love tonight the goal frenzy. I loved the response also to a difficult position that Saturday's performance left them in. But that wasted opportunity of the German game. You know
Yeah.
that building block to change our mindset. The mindset that whenever we're in a tournament and we're about to face a proper team, Netherlands, Belgium, Argentina in the Copa. You know, when you speak to players off the record, honestly, from years past, and you ask them, did you really expect to win against Belgium 2014, against Ghana 2010? They'll many of the players will say, no, no, we didn't. You know, and that Germany game, a friendly, yes, but so was the Community Shield for Arsenal. That Arsenal won. They beat Manchester City in penalties. We laughed. But I spoke to Mikel Arteta today, and we talked about how you build a mindset or how you change a mindset. And for him, you first have to prove you can beat a team. You know, even if it is the Community Shield, and then in the
Right.
league, step by step, one thing at a time. And it is time. Don't you, let me phrase the question: isn't it time with all this talent, and we have so much talent, that we don't moral victory and lose when we take on the big teams. We have to beat them in tournaments bravely. This needs to change a mindset. And you mentioned these proclamations. We're going to change the world. Thinks about America, or America thinks about the world. Unless the mentality changes, unless the results change, ultimately, we're not really doing that.
I mean, friendlies, you've beaten Germany before. You've beaten the Netherlands. You've beaten Italy. You've beaten Mexico. You've beaten top teams in friendlies. It's the tournaments that you're talking about where you've suffered. It's the tournament. It's the World Cups where, you know, you're an average team. Where the expected, or I should say, the norm has been a 1-1-1. Those are the games that you suffer in. Now, I'm okay with taking your lumps against Germany right here in this friendly if it means that Greg Berhalter and his staff then say, you know what, it's okay that we took these lumps because if we face a team at the level of Germany at the Copa America, we're going to play or try to play the same way we played against England. And you know what, Raj? You're going to say the same things they said about the U.S. men's national team then as they did back then. Hard to play against, spirited, transition, physical, athletic. And guess what? If you can add a little bit of ability in there, you're France. That's what France is. And look how good. That's what Argentina. That the world is changing when it comes to football. There are a few teams that play this free-flowing tiki-taka that doesn't exist anymore. Teams want to win. Nations want to win. Serious competitors, that's all they think of.
I think that's totally fair. And that is where we need to be. That's where we want us to be. That's where we have to go. By the way, in the YouTube comments, Patty Big League says, podcast of Rod summarizing movies. I'd listen. It would be terrible. Though I did just watch, on the way to Europe, I watched City of God. And I spent the whole flight.
Oh, great
Oh my
movie.
God.
That is a
Oh
beautiful
my
movie.
God. It's like the fifth time I've seen it. I've not seen it in a couple of years. But this time I did wonder, who is the US men's national team equivalent of Knockout Ned? And why don't we have one? And is it following Balogun? We will find out. There was a great question in there. Is it William Roberts? Someone asked if it's not William Roberts. It was in the chat. Let me try and find it because it was a bloody beautiful question. Oh, Gage Wheeler. Who would Christopher Nolan cast Christian Bale as in the US men's national team? I would love to see Christian Bale's Michael Bradley, actually. Michael Bradley, I always wondered because he was so intense, and Herc, you played with him, I didn't. But Michael Bradley was so intense and remarkable. I always wondered why he wasn't captain of the US more. And then I realized that Michael Bradley, when you guys needed a win, like in Snowmageddon or Snow Classico or whatever, Michael Bradley would be like, we're going to play Costa Rica. This is the most important game of our lives. We have to destroy them. But again, when you were playing a friendly against Curacao or whatever you were playing, Michael Bradley was also in the locker room being like, "We're playing Curacao in a friendly. This is the biggest game of our lives." And
I'm telling you, the guy's a competitor. It's funny. It's funny you mentioned the captain thing, Raj,
because
because
he was,
if you
he
think
believed
about
it. By the way, just to be clear, he did
of
believe
course,
Curacao in a friendly was the
course.
biggest game of their lives in that moment.
And the training session you were in with Michael Bradley was the most important training session of the week. You know, that's just who he is. It's in his DNA. And if you meet his father, Bob, then you understand they live by a certain
Oh
code.
my
I
god,
love it. But
Strybeck.
but that's exactly who he was, who they are, and probably why he was as successful as he was. I'd probably go Jason
Yeah,
Statham.
Jason
Uh,
Statham for Michael Bradley.
yeah, that's I think I would go
So
with.
who would Christopher Nolan just embed himself in? Absolutely and complete. Oh my God, Christopher Nolan's Berhalter would be the Oscar. Or where? You know what? We're gonna leave at this moment because we've got to take your questions. We have so much to discuss still. But there's one last issue I do need to hit because this is actually important. But we're going to take your questions, come up on the stage, bang them into YouTube, and the emails. We'll answer them all. But there is one thing. How do we get buzz building around this United States team, Herc? The turnout tonight in Nashville was, I mean, it was not great. I didn't see the final number, but you could see that upper deck in a 30,000 seater stadium. Nashville's a great. I was just there last week. It's a proper football city. We have to build energy around this team, build narrative around this team, build joy around this team. Tonight there was 62,000 in Philadelphia watching Mexico in an NFL stadium in Lincoln Field.
Yeah,
The United States. 86,000 fans in attendance for El Clasico de Mexico, a friendly between Club America and Chivas at the Rose Bowl. Incredible sight, incredible wonder, incredible moment, incredible football. Messi aside, US soccer, American soccer, we're still waiting to make the noise. We're still waiting to break through the clutter, Herc.
yeah. Listen, you got to start playing at some of these big venues. It's a reality because when you play in these little venues, well, the American fan, the hardcore fan, can get priced out, and they're expensive, and it's cultural, right? The U.S., when it comes to soccer, is still trying to be a sport where you see kids playing on the street as you would Mexico or Brazil or Argentina or anywhere in Europe. It's not there as of yet. It's getting better, absolutely, and you can see it in the Major League Soccer stadiums. You can see it in USL stadiums. You can see it in certain venues that you play. But for it to be a guarantee, I'd like to see some bigger venues, and even if it's not full, but you get more people in because they could be priced in. I feel a lot of those people are being priced out.
God, price us in, America. Come on, let us get behind our boys and just revel in them. Listeners, to your questions, you know the drill. If you've got a question, request a call in. We'll move you to the stage. Stay muted until we call your name, at which point click the little red button on your avatar to unmute and come be with us. We'll also take your questions via YouTube, email, the works. We are going to bring up at Blef612. Tell us where you are, Bleffy612, and what's your question? Bleffy, I think we've lost you. We'll come back to you. Are you unmute? Just unmute for a second, Bleff. You got to push that little avatar left of your thing with your finger. Use your finger. The finger's the thing on the end of your hand. Your hand's connected to your arm. Okay, we'll go to at J Cross. I think we've got a tech issue there. At J Cross, come be with us. Tell us where you are and what's your question.
Hey, Raj. Hey, Herc. This is Ian calling in from Seattle, proper Sounders country. You actually kind of touched on my question already. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You actually you touched on my question a little bit already about the attendance and why U.S. soccer is struggling a little bit, but I'll pivot instead and ask you a little question. We had that second half there, the substitutions, things got a little sleepy. What are the odds that an old guy, it's late there on the East Coast, like Tim Ream, just maybe had a little nap on the sideline, just, catching a little shut eye before he heads back east? What do you think?
Oh, he was checked out for sure. I guarantee you he didn't watch any of that second half. He might have been on his phone on the bench.
Yeah.
There is a question from Gage Wheeler which ties into this one. What did you make of the centre back pairing? Not much of a real test, but we mentioned
It's
Tim
not
Ream.
much of a real test.
We mentioned Tim Ream patting. I think the highlight of the defensive night was him patting Walker Zimmerman's baby on the head in a beautiful, beautiful way. That gentleman really is the father, not just to his own children and his many dogs, but also, I think, to a huge percentage of the 22 other members of the US squad. But the question was, do you think this gives Berhalter second thoughts about the Ream Richards pairing, or is that still our first choice?
No, I definitely think it gives him second thoughts about the Ream Richards pairing. Listen, Tim Ream is an absolutely fabulous person and fabulous footballer. But all you're asking for Tim Ream in his attempt to play the next World Cup is from 3 years from now be still as physically gifted, sharp, physically and mentally, and healthy in that World Cup. And every game that he plays leading up to it, you're just blocking a Cameron Carter-Vickers, a Chris Richards, a Miles Robinson. And Miles Robinson gets an Austin Trusty. Miles Robinson gets a bad rep by a lot of different fans out there. And I think it's because he plays in Major League Soccer and he may have had a mistake or two, but make no mistakes about it. Before his injury, he was center back one, like on the depth chart. And post his injury, I still think he can make a run. And we'll see if he stays in Atlanta this season. But that kid screams Europe to me. And I think having him physically fit and able will be a necessity for Greg Berhalter and this U.S. men's national team.
God willing, we from defence to creativity from YouTube. William Roberts, is Gio the saviour? How central is he for us, Herc, in the here and now? He's so solid, says William Roberts. Can he get playing time at Dortmund? Where is he in the kind of hierarchy? We know the Pulisic thing. We know Tyler Adams when fit. Is Gio now? The American fans, a lot of them going in with Gio's got to earn the spot. Gio's, he's in the squad. He's not a starter. Where is Gio in your mind after this window?
After this window, before this window, he's the U.S. men's national team player with the highest ceiling. I mean, Christian Pulisic went for like $70+ million from Dortmund to Chelsea. I think Gio's ceiling is higher, but he's got to prove it. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to earn minutes on the field, keep his nose clean, and keep producing. If he's on the field and healthy, he's going to produce. I've got no question about it. I think Kyle Martino said it best right before the game kicked off. There is no lineup. There is no best U.S. men's national team lineup possible without a Giovanni Reyna in it. I firmly believe that. If you want to get the best out of your team and the players in your team, a Fowler and Balogun, whether it's Ricardo Pepi, Josh Sargent, Christian Pulisic, Timothy Weah, who we barely mentioned at all, who for me was one of the standout players in both games, that's a Gio Reyna type of player. Gio Reyna unlocks that type of potential. So I think that would be one of the biggest challenges for Greg Berhalter is how do you keep Gio Reyna maybe out of his hands, but fit and on the field and producing.
Hey, well, let's hit two more quickly. Robert Tater from YouTube. Is Balogun now our QB1 at striker? Has he locked it down?
Keep in mind, this was a very bad Ghana team, and they defended very poorly. Serginho Dest ran amok because he was never threatened. He never had to worry about defending. So keep that in mind. I think he is still 1A, but I think you have to respect Ricardo Pepi. Has been doing with the U.S. men's national team. And I still think that Josh Sargent is one of the most talented players in this pool. And at some point, he will come back healthy. And I think Flo's going to have a bit of a battle on his hands. And if he keeps doing what he's doing, the only way to keep these guys off is scoring goals, I think everybody will be happy, and that question will be answered.
God, the words Josh and Sargent, I love together. I love that kid's mentality. I love his everything. I think he is an absolute grinder. And the joy of it is we have different options. We have such different options there between Pepe, Ballo, Josh Sargent. I just love the whole mix, and that's what I'd focus on in ultimately a squad game. Couple of quicks before we leave. Patty Big Leagues. What a great question. God, this is a complicated one. Who sits once Tyler Adams returns? McKinney, Musa, or Tyler Adams?
I think it's Musa. If you look at how decisive all three players can be, influential in your game, Tyler Adams is going to defend for you. He's going to lead for you. He's going to be that heartbeat for your team. Weston McKinney is just a constant goal threat, duality to his game, box to box. And Yunus Musa is just so smooth, right? But Yunus Musa is not the guy getting the goals or the assists, and he's not exactly the guy into that tackle and preventing, the goal scoring play. So you had to sacrifice one of the three for the greater good, being Gio Reyna. I think it's Yunus Musa here.
Controversial. I will not be giving my opinion on tonight's show. I will be saving that one because I want to ask more questions of Herc. I love your questions coming from YouTube. Charlie F.O. This is a great question. Oh, Herc, if you could pick a young American prodigy before the World Cup, in what position would you want? Essentially, where would you most want to reinforce in this squad?
That's a great question.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's left back. I think I'd like a different type of left back, and Anthony Robinson has served admirably. He's been one of the most productive players for Greg Berhalter. But I'd like a left back akin to the right back potential that you have in Serginho Dest, a much more fluid player with the ball at his feet, a much more thinker in the final third, another goal threat, if you will. If I were coaching, and I would never want to coach, you'd know exactly what type of team I would have by the fullbacks that I have, by the outside backs, the left back and the right back. Those are my quarterbacks. Those are the players who constantly handle the ball the most in any given game. So I if I could, that would be where. And it sounds like a disservice to Anthony because he's been so good and I'm a massive fan. But that's the one position, if I could upgrade, I would.
God, that's madness. That is utter. Now I'm trying to think what the right answer to this question is. And I think I'm talking myself into us believing that we're going to win the World Cup. I love this question. Barrett, I keep trying to wrap this up, but you guys are asking such incredible questions. This one cracked me up. Barrett Roberts, does the addition of a prime Clint Dempsey to this squad lock up the World Cup? These are hard hitters.
I don't know. Sometimes when there's like a Jamie Foxx, I used to watch Jamie Foxx do stand-up when I was younger, and Jamie Foxx had this joke about, like, when you go to somebody's house and there's a pit bull in the house, and you're like, yo, whose dog is this? Like, yo, is this your dog? Kind of makes you uneasy. Like, putting in such a strong personality into that locker room, I don't know how it would go. He is a killer. He's an absolute killer, but you would have to try to play to Clint's strengths, and I don't think you'd sacrifice right now. Would you want to sacrifice Gio? Probably not. Would you want to sacrifice Fowler and Balogun? Okay, then that would mean Clint plays the 9. It's just there are different eras, and Clint's one of those guys that fit perfectly in our era with the people around. Like, there were strong enough personalities to deal, and he's one of those competitors that you love to be around. I love players like Clint. I love those Kobe mentalities, but I don't know what that mentality would be like in a dynamic in today's locker
There's
room
2
for these
questions you've
internationals.
taken super seriously tonight, and I do admire you for both of them. The second one was that one, Clint Dempsey, would he make us win the World Cup? The first was just how many goals would you have scored tonight against Ghana, which you really
I'm still thinking about it.
I know, and I love that, and I admire it so greatly. Last question, very quick one, very quick burst. James Boris asks, how is Herc feeling about El Tree after this window? Give us a quick burst on that.
Yeah, I think you have to feel optimistic if you're a Mexican national team fan. That's the best run of games for the U.S. or for the Mexican national team in I want to say 4 or 5 years, and I don't think there's been this much goodwill with the coach since 2019, the Tata Martino honeymoon era, where they beat the U.S. men's national team in Gold Cup. It's been that long. It's been so long since Mexican fans have had something to cheer about. But the pool is still weak. He's doing a lot of good things, making these players believe, but the pool is very thin. It's a very thin pool. So feel good about the direction. Don't feel so good about it, the expectations.
God, that is frightening. Feel good about the execution. Do not feel good about the expectations. You've just described my life. God bless Jimmy Lozano, and Godspeed to all. I do want to end before we get. I've loved tonight. I've loved these YouTube conversations. I've loved the YouTube questions. But I want to end by raising a shot of Jägermeister, a bowl of human emotion in a shot glass to England. Congratulations, England national team, who dumped defending champion Italy 3-1. Just a swaggering performance tonight, led by the truly transcendent Jude Bellingham, essentially English Gio, who ran the game. Goals from Harry Kane, of course, and Marcus Rashford. Lovely to see that gent scoring again. England, oh, God bless. Heading to Euro 2024, where they will undoubtedly lose to France in the semi-finals, probably on penalties. Herc, last word from you tonight. Just give me your big lesson, your big sense of wonder. Make us feel great about the United States after all we've lived in the past week.
It takes a certain type of mentality to come back the way they did. I don't care how bad Ghana was or is. When you lose that way, the worst half, the first half against Germany, the worst half I've seen from Greg Berhalter's team, essentially the same team that he's had for the last 3 to 4 years, it speaks a lot about you when you have that type of resolve and you show that type of performance, which I thought was a very professional performance and the best half that I've seen from Greg Berhalter's men in his tenure. So congratulations to them. You should feel good about the pool you have going forward, but just take it one game at a time.
God bless. Thatcher's just saying the Lions looking good. I think by the Lions, you mean the US men's national team. God bless. Who does that make the Chicago Bears in CONCACAF? Before we go, a quick look at everything coming up on Men in Blazers Media Network. All of it powered, of course, by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Coming up tomorrow, as we rebound off the international break like one of those little balls hitting a paddle in the Atari game Pong, we are bringing you a pod special of epic proportion. It's a pair of conversations with some of the biggest characters in global football. The first, the gent I spoke with this morning, Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta. He's on great form, talking about what Pep said to him after Arsenal's victory over Manchester City, as well as the importance, the centrality, the tactical criticality, if that's a word, of Arsenal's pet dog win. And the other conversation in this pod, it's only Erling Haaland and Jack Grealish. Those antithetical footballing elements somehow combine to create matter that's even greater than their individual beings. We got the chance to talk to them to get together. It was bloody hilarious. I'm not sure if I've just ballsed up that chemistry analogy. I was terrible at chemistry, but it sounded good when I was thinking about it. So until next time, I just want to say, Herc Gomez, ESPN Plus, Football Americas, the single greatest. Vamos, if it's possible to be better than the single greatest, that podcast fills me with joy and meaning and a sense of wonder. It's a joy to share this international break with you.
Raj, as always, thank you so much. I always enjoy myself. Lots of fun.
Mate, you're the single greatest, honestly, in every regard. It's Rog saying, GFOPs, come be with us. Go, go USA. Think positive thoughts. Savor every second. We'll be back. Oh my God, it's the derby, 7:30 a.m. Please, not in the face, Liverpool. It's Rog saying courage.